Well, well, well. What do we have here? It looks like some independent testing done properly on the old versus new PS5 has finally come to light thanks to the wonderful YouTube channel of Hardware Busters International, who did some proper testing on these systems for fan speeds, temperatures, power consumption in controlled environments, and done correctly at the hardware level and not by measuring exhaust temperatures like Austin Evans did. And guess what? I was right all along. Like a lot. Like really, really a lot. So let's get fired into it, shall we? But first, today's video is brought to you by Prime Tech Mart, where you can grab software products like Windows 10 Pro licenses for extremely cheap. They've also got Office products and Vizio, as well as many more. You can save a lot of money on these keys with something like Windows 10 Pro. You can grab for just $21.43. It's a lifetime activation, so you don't ever need to renew it. You don't need to create an account with them in order to be able to buy it, and you get your key in just a matter of seconds. And if you hit up the links down in the description below and you want to save yourself an additional 20% off of any software over there, just go ahead and use my code JP20 at checkout, apply that, and it'll drop down 20%. So here on Windows 10 Pro for $21, we drop that down to $17 and you're fully activated for life. For more information, check out those links down in the description below along with the coupon code. So this video by Hardware Busters International was posted yesterday, where he tested the old versus the new model of the PS5. And I'm going to be kind of jumping around here a little bit in my video editor to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. But you could see here he shows off initially that he does have one of the updated models with the model number here shown correctly onto the system for the updated version of the PS5. Now, he did have the disc version of the system. When Austin Evans did his comparison, he had the digital copy, but honestly, that's not going to really make any difference whatsoever. Really, what matters is the internal components and the heatsink, which was the main point of contention in Austin Evans' video. And with the updated models, we are getting the smaller heatsink on the new version of the PS5. Now, even more so interesting is that Hardware Busters International was fortunate enough to get two systems with the same exact fan, because the PS5s are actually shipping with multiple different versions of the fan because it's just hard to source all of just one fan. So depending on whether you get the old or the new system, it could affect which fan you get. Thankfully here, he ended up getting the same exact fan in both systems, which Austin Evans did not have, which is, not his fault. But really the main point again here is going to be the heatsink. So it seems like the fan here may not have really made that much of a difference in terms of the temperatures, but I like that he actually has the same fan here because that's going to give us a true apples to apples comparison of the heatsink, as that is the primary difference between the two systems. So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead here and get into the temperature testing results, because that's really, I think, what everyone is here for, to see the results at the end of the day. And surprise, surprise, the CPU or the SoC of the updated PS5 was running 11 degrees cooler, because the heatsink was more efficient at exhausting heat outside of the system, which is exactly what we saw in Austin's video, except he just ended up reaching the wrong conclusion at the end of the day. I'll go ahead and hit play here, so this can go ahead and run. As you can see, it's running in real time with the two different systems, where he had the systems hooked up to test the thermals properly. Now, the temperatures of things like the memory actually did come up by about 8 degrees, but this is still a net win for the CPU on this. And at the end of the day, anyone that knows anything about PC hardware knows that the CPU or SoC temperature is way more important than the memory temperature. Now, if I were to theorize exactly why we're seeing this here, why the memory temperatures have come up, it's because the heatsink is primarily utilized to cool off the SoC and the CPU. So by doing a better job, it's actually creating more heat within the system, which is probably raising the temperatures of the memory, which is why we saw more heat being exhausted out of the system, because the heatsink itself is doing a better job of cooling the CPU, and that is the same conclusion that Hardware Busters International came to, because that's honestly what makes sense, and that's the conclusion that Austin should have come to in his video. Now, as far as his testing is concerned, this guy has some serious equipment here. You could see in his little shop here where they do all of their testing that this guy is fully equipped to do pretty much any type of hardware testing. He has more hardware in that room for testing components than I've ever owned in my entire life and will ever own, probably more than me and Austin Evans even combined. So yeah, this guy is fully equipped to do proper testing. As you can see, he's got a ton of stuff here and obviously a lot of technological know-how. So yeah, he really does seem to know what he is doing. He also did some tests on the fans, and you could see here that the fan speeds were actually about the same, which really shouldn't come as much of a surprise in this particular scenario because he did have the same exact fan in both systems, and both ran at about the same exact speed, so really nothing too different there. He did do some noise testing, and as you can see, like with all of his testing, controlled environment. He's in a room with sound padding, sound dampening materials on the walls to have a true, a better testing environment, really, than just having them sitting in the middle of a room where there's lots of other noise potentially going on around you. So very controlled environment, but again, they're using the same fans in both systems, so we didn't really see any difference there in terms of the benchmark results. And then on power testing, again, results were about the same between the two systems, pretty much negligible, so we're not seeing any huge difference there. Again, the main point of the original video was talking about the temperatures and the CPU, the SoC, and here, again, 11 degrees cooler. 11 degrees Celsius cooler. Anyone that's ever used PC hardware knows that that is not an insignificant amount. 11C is huge. That's like going from an air cooler to an all-in-one. They have done whatever they have done with the updated heatsink, whether it's through materials that are more thermally efficient or if there's more room inside of the chassis for airflow. Whatever PS5 engineers have done, they have done a good job to get the system running cooler and probably even more affordable on the hardware level. And he also noted in his video that even though it's got a smaller heatsink, that the new heatsink still has the same exact 6 heat pipes like in the original version of the PS5, and he did also do some external thermal imaging, just like Austin Evans did. And, this doesn't really tell us a whole lot, although you can see that with the newer system, the exterior of the system was hotter because it was pulling away more heat from the SoC itself, which, again, the most important thing. It's pulling away more heat from the CPU, the most important component of any PC or console, whatever you want to call it. Either way, these are basically budget PCs at this point. So more heat out means less heat in, and if the heatsink is doing a better job, it's going to put more heat into the chassis, which means it's going to have to exhaust that heat. So that's why Austin saw higher temperatures outside the system, but when properly tested at the metal level, the CPU is running 11 degrees cooler, and the memory, I said, 8 degrees warmer, which is, again, that's not an insignificant amount there, but I think that's because of the heat from the CPU being more dissipated, so it's building up in the system a little bit more, and then it has to be exhausted out. So unless they actually did do a significant upgrade to the fan system, we probably won't see that number come down, but I wouldn't really be worried about the memory temperatures. The CPU is what I'd be focused on primarily in any hardware testing, honestly. And at the end of the day, it's still a net victory, and like I said, the CPU is more important. So that's all I've got for you guys on this. I'm happy to finally put this controversy to bed about this PS5 testing, which I've been bombarded with negative comments and downvotes for weeks, although a lot of people were very smart initially on those videos and replying back and agreed with what I had to say. Once Austin posted his video, which shed more light on it to his fan base, it just really took a U-turn completely, and the downvotes shot up, and now it has more downvotes on both videos than it does upvotes because his fans were coming and basically attacking me, which, whatever, I can take it. I could give a shit less what people are honestly saying, because I knew at the end of the day that I was going to be proven right. And on that 11 degrees Celsius note, since this guy only had, one of each system to test, and he mentions this in the videos that, of course, it would be better if he could get like 5 different samples of each system, but that's almost impossible nowadays unless you have a sweet hookup with Sony, and he bought these systems himself. This was completely independent testing by Hardware Busters International. But again, I lost my train of thought there. But on the point of his system being 11C cooler and not having more systems to test, early on, when I very first put up my initial video on the Austin Evans and his testing methodology of the PS5, I had someone in the tech space reach out to me and talk about the testing and all of that stuff, and he told me in the initial testing, they were seeing a difference of 10 degrees Celsius on the new PS5, and that was something that I didn't publicize. I talked a little bit about it in the comments and stuff, but I didn't really want to take away anyone's thunder if they were planning on doing a content piece, whether written or a video or whatever. But it just goes to show that the testing they were seeing was 10°C cooler, and the end result now, over a week later from someone completely different, ended up being 11 degrees Celsius cooler. So that kind of corroborates it, where at least, you know, I'm just passing that information along to you. These were two different systems, and one person saw it was 10°C cooler, one person saw it was 11°C cooler, and that 1 degree is really within the margin of error. But, you know, 10 degree or 11 degrees, that is not. That's a huge amount. But, you know, 10, 11°C, if that's what the average, what we're seeing here is cooler on the new system, then I would have to conclude that the new heatsink is doing a better job of cooling the most important component of the PS5, which is the SoC. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Hope you guys all have a great day, and I will catch you tomorrow for another video. Turn.